Jesus tells a story. He says there's a guy who was essentially the manager of a rich man's household. And he had been using the money to enrich himself. And needless to say, if you try to pull something like that, you get found out sooner or later, and the boss found out. And he called him in and said, "What's this? I hear about you using my money and basically stealing it. You're fired. Get out. Can't be my manager anymore. Give me an account. In other words, give me the books." And so the manager says to himself, "What am I going to do? The boss is firing me. Can't dig. I'm too old. Too proud to beg. How am I going to make a living? How am I going to live until I get out of here?" And he would have lost his house too, because he would have lived in the boss's household. Because I know what I'll do. So he called debtors of his master to come into his office. And the guy comes in, probably kind of nervous. You know, what is he going to do? Is he going to double my interest rate or something? And he says, "What do you owe my master?" It was 100 barrels of oil. He says, "Sit down, take your bill, and write 50. Make it 50. Cut it in half." Another one comes in. "What do you owe my master?" "I owe him 100 bushels of wheat." "Sit down, take your bill, and write 80 on it." Now those guys who you did that for would have been really, really happy. "Oh, I like this guy." And his motivation was, this way I'll be able to go and stay at their houses after I lose my job and my room. I've always questioned that. Because if I owed him 100 bushels of wheat, and Bob called me in and said, "Make it 80, because he's going to throw Bob out of the house because he's had enough after all these years, am I going to want to hire Bob when I know that's what he does to his boss's money?" I always kind of wondered about that one, but that was the guy's motivation. And the other part of the story that's kind of unusual is when the boss hears about what he did, he called him in and congratulated him on being shrewd. And Jesus says, the children of this earth are very, very shrewd with the things of this earth. Much more shrewd than you folks are. Use the things of this earth to build up treasures later on in heaven. It almost sounds like Jesus is encouraging this type of behavior. And it kind of puzzled me. I was reading it this week and looking at some commentaries. And I came across one that said Jesus was using an example of what not to do. It's kind of like, well, if you want to live as a good disciple, live the way she does. She lives her life as a disciple of Christ, focusing on other people and doing those kind of things. Don't do what Bob does. Because Bob doesn't live that way. And so therefore, don't emulate Bob. And I looked on that, and I thought about it for a while. And I said, sometimes negative examples are something that get our attention. They make a point with us. I think the way that the passage closes out really speaks to an awful lot. That dishonest manager, and the dishonest guy he worked for, because the guy admired him because he was being dishonest as a manager, his boss. We're both focused on money and material things. And that's what they served. Their whole life was wrapped up in that. And that's what they did. They lived their life using money as a way to manipulate other people, as a way to achieve power over other people, as their value system for living life in this world and as a follower of God, if these people were indeed followers of God. That society, pretty much everybody was, at least on the surface. Jesus says you can't serve two masters. You'll either love one and hate the other, or obey one and disobey the other. And then he says the key piece. You can't serve both God and money. We're in the middle of probably one of the most unique presidential elections that I can remember since I was born in '58. Not that they aren't all nasty to some extent and full of exaggerations and outright lies and everything else, and we have plenty of that this time as well. But the one thing, especially in the recent past, that has been a problem for years, especially in the media age, and just seems to get worse and worse, is the influence of money in the process. The more money there is available, the better chance you have of coming out on top. You can buy more advertisements, you can buy more things to stuff in people's mailboxes, you can go on TV, you can make yourself prominent every place. You can do outrageous things and know that the news will cover you and it won't cost you anything. Promoters are really, really good at this. I remember Celebrity Apprentice years and years ago. One of the tasks that the celebrities were to do was to do promotion of something. And he brought in Vince McMahon from the Wrestling Federation to be the instructor on this thing, and he said that he's one of the best promoters I've ever known other than me. And he's promoting himself. That's what he's doing. What you have to do when you're running for president. But money becomes so important that it pushes everything else to the side. While I was preparing last night, I had on the TV in the background, and a documentary came on Nicholas Tesla. Nicholas Tesla, yes, it is the same name as the car, the electric car, and it's named after him, or Tesla, I should say. He was the guy who electrified Niagara Falls and was a champion of alternating current as opposed to direct current. Edison was promoting direct current as the way to electrify the United States, and Tesla was promoting alternating current. And direct current had a major, major drawback. You can't send it over lines to distant areas. You have to have power plants like every 10 miles or so because the power would dissipate. Where alternating current, the electricity burning these lamps is probably coming from Niagara Falls, part of it, because you could send it over miles and miles and miles and miles and miles of wire. One of the things he wanted to do when he started work on, but then the Depression hit, his funding dried up, so he stopped, was to use a what's called a Tesla coil, kind of a round saucer-shaped thing sitting on top, and it generated electricity. If you've ever seen those balls, you know, with the thing inside, if you touch your finger to it, you see the electricity going over towards your finger. This thing would shoot out electricity. The guy who was demonstrating put fluorescent light bulbs sitting there just in styrofoam to hold them, and turned this thing on over here, and the light bulbs lit up because the electricity traveled through the air. Tesla wanted to supply free electricity to the entire world. Needless to say, people who became GE and people like that didn't like it too much, and it got squashed. Because while electricity for the entire world would do things like help to eliminate poverty, and help to feed people, help to care for people, and let people get information, all these wonderful type of things that we say we strive for, the money interests were against him. So they worked against him. He was a showman. He would sit inside a metal cage and put on one of these coils, and the bolts would come to the cage he was sitting inside. Made a big deal, but it's science because the metal would conduct it, and it wouldn't touch him because it wouldn't pass through him easily. It passed through the metal easily. The ground. But because there was a very, very real chance, pretty much a certainty, that if he was able to achieve this dream, then companies would not be able to sell electricity to people. And you're talking, how much is your electric bill? Multiply it by how many people in the country, right? Massive amounts of money caused Tesla to fail. Anybody familiar with the Tucker tornado? It was a car built by a guy named Tucker. You can find one in the Smithsonian Museum of American History in D.C. Has one headlight in front. When you turn your headlight, the headlight turned with it. It was made by this guy, and he was fighting against GM and all the big companies, the car companies, because he was making it inexpensively. He was putting in things that they didn't, and they saw trouble, and they saw problems, and they saw their money going away, so they basically sabotaged the guy. He was able to meet the required goal of making 50 cars, but after that he was done. Alternate energy things. You know, the car that runs on water gets 100 miles to the gallon. We've all seen those kind of things, right? But if somebody could do that and find a way to separate the hydrogen and oxygen out of the water, hydrogen and oxygen are flammable, and you could run a car on them. But what would happen to Exxon and Shell and all those guys? So they work against these things. Because they don't serve God, they serve money. They love one and despise the other. And we're called to be the opposite. To love one and despise the other. Now, Pastor, if I despise money, how am I supposed to pay my mortgage? I got a family. Bible says take care of your family. If I despise money, how am I going to take care of my family? They need clothes, they need food, they need a place to live, education, all these kind of things. How am I going to do that? You've heard me say often, money is necessary. I mean, in this society especially, you can't live without it. You have to have it. So much so that we actually have programs to provide money to people who don't have it. Not sufficient programs, but we have programs. But if we chase after money, and we take money as being the motivation behind why we live our lives the way we do, then we start to slip over into that serving money area. We can use money, and you know what? I can despise it at the same time, because I look at what greed does. I'll be going down to Patterson next Sunday for the Action Against Hunger food drive. I know a number of the people who work at Kumak, and they were former clients, and they live in the city. And they've got to deal with things that I don't even imagine, you know? Your kid going to school and not learning anything all day. Your kid going to school and sitting in a classroom where there's pipes leaking water on the floor, and the windows are broken, and the floor's messed up, and there's holes in the wall, and it's not getting fixed because the city doesn't have the money. You can't go out and walk down the street because there's gangs and random bullets flying around and things of that nature. That's outside my experience. An awful lot of that is due to money. I would say the majority. When we see things about infant illnesses and high infant death rates, when we have the knowledge and the equipment and drugs and stuff to help with these things, but an EpiPen becomes $600 for a 2-pack. I read something when that was going on in the news. The actual epinephrine that's in that injector costs about $10, if that. The CEO of the company said, oh, well, we have research into the injector thing, and it's very precise. It has to be this, it has to be that. And this is why we raised the price from $100 for a 2-pack up to $600. Oh, but we'll be nice. We'll come out with a generic version for only $300 for a 2-pack. I can despise money. I need it and I use it. Doesn't mean I gotta like it. Jesus also said, where your heart is, your treasure. What do we concentrate on? What do we focus on? What is our motivation? Is it making money? Is that what we live for? Do we live to make money? Or do we make money in order to live? Do we serve God or do we serve money? Jesus said, you can't do both. What are you going to do? Let's pray. Lord God, we give you thanks for your love and for all the things that you do for us and in us and through us. We thank you for the accident of birth.